The rain-soaked streets of Seattle glistened under the neon glow. But for Elias Navarro, the world was a blur of panic and heat. His body burned, a primal fire coursing through him, Omega instincts screaming for something Sumyani couldn't name. By the time he stumbled into the alley behind the old jazz club, his vision swam, and the scent of cedar and musk hit him like a tidal wave. Elias wasn't supposed to be here. He was a barista, a quiet guy who kept his head down in a city that didn't care about Omegas like him. But tonight, his heat had betrayed him, pulling him out of his apartment and into the arms of fate or something far more dangerous. The alley was a dead end, but the air thrummed with something alive, something powerful. He clutched the brick wall, gasping, when a figure stepped from the shadows. "You shouldn't be out here alone," the man said, his voice low, a gravelly caress that sent shivers down Elias's spine. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair falling into piercing green eyes. His scent wild, untamed, like a forest after a storm marked him as an alpha. Elias's knees buckled, but the stranger caught him, strong hands steadying his trembling frame. "I'm fine," Elias lied, his voice cracking. He wasn't fine. He was drowning in his own body, in the pull of this stranger who felt like home and danger all at once. "Who are you?" "Cashin Holt," the man said, his gaze softening but guarded. "And you're in trouble, aren't you?" Elias wanted to argue, to push him away, but the heat was relentless, and Cashin's touch was an anchor. They didn't speak as Cashin guided him to a nearby loft, a hidden sanctuary above the club. The night blurred into a haze of whispered words, desperate touches, and a connection that felt like it could rewrite the stars. When Elias woke the next morning, Cashin was gone, leaving only a note: "Stay safe. I'll find you." Weeks later, Elias stared at the pregnancy test in his trembling hands, the double lines mocking his fragile hope. He was pregnant with an alpha's child, a hybrid, in a world that barely tolerated Omegas, let alone their offspring. Seattle's underbelly whispered of packs, of ancient bloodlines, of alphas who ruled in shadows. Elias had never believed the stories, but Cashin's scent, his strength, his sudden absence, they hinted at truths he wasn't ready to face. He tried to move on, to focus on his job at the coffee shop, where his co-worker Maya teased him about his mystery man. But the nausea, the cravings, and the strange pulses of energy in his body wouldn't let him forget. He felt Cashin in every heartbeat, a bond that shouldn't exist after one night. Then, one evening, as Elias locked up the shop, a shadow moved across the street. Not Cashin, but someone watching, their eyes glinting with something predatory. Elias's phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message was simple: "You're carrying something dangerous. Run." His heart pounded as he stuffed the phone in his pocket and bolted toward his apartment. The city, once a haven, now felt like a trap. Every alley seemed to hide a threat, every stranger a potential hunter. He didn't know what Cashin was, but he knew one thing: this baby, their baby, was more than human. By the time he reached his apartment, his breath was ragged. He locked the door, slid to the floor, and pressed a hand to his stomach. "We're okay," he whispered, more to himself than the life inside him. But the knock at the door shattered his fragile calm. It was Cashin, his face etched with worry and something darker: guilt. "You shouldn't be here," Elias snapped, torn between relief and anger. "You left me." "I had to," Cashin said, stepping inside despite Elias's glare. "There are things you don't know about me, about what's coming for you." "Then tell me." Elias's voice broke, his hands shaking. "I'm pregnant, Cashin. Your baby. And someone's after me. What the hell is going on?" Cashin's jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with a golden hue that wasn't human. "You're carrying a hybrid," he said, his voice low. "Part Omega, part Alpha and part something else. My bloodline. It's not just wolf. It's older, wilder. And there are people who'll kill to control it." Elias's breath caught. He'd heard rumors of shifters, of ancient packs hidden in the Pacific Northwest, but he'd thought they were myths. Cashin's words turned his world upside down. "So what? I'm just collateral damage in your pack war." "No," Cashin said fiercely, stepping closer. His hand hovered near Elias's cheek, hesitant, then dropped. "You're everything. I didn't plan this, but I feel you, Elias. Every second, I feel you. And I'll die before I let anyone hurt you or our child." The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken promises and fears. Elias wanted to push him away, to protect his heart, but the bond was undeniably a thread tying them through blood and instinct. He let Cashin pull him close, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling. For a moment, the world was just them, two souls caught in a storm. But the moment shattered. A crash outside the apartment sent Cashin into a crouch, his eyes glowing fully gold now. "They're here," he growled. "Stay behind me." Elias's heart raced as he grabbed a kitchen knife, useless against whatever hunted them, but better than nothing. The door splintered, and two figures burst in with eyes like wolves, their movements too fluid, too predatory. Cashin moved faster, a blur of strength and fury, but not before one of the intruders lunged at Elias. "Run!" Cashin roared, tackling the attacker. Elias stumbled back, clutching his stomach, as the room erupted into chaos. The knife fell from his hand, useless against the snarls and claws. He didn't know what Cashin was, but he knew one thing: this was only the beginning. Elias's world narrowed to the pounding of his heart and the snarls filling the apartment. Cashin fought like a force of nature, his movements a deadly dance of muscle and instinct. But the intruders were relentless. One, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, broke free and lunged toward Elias again, his eyes glinting with cold purpose. "Stay back," Elias shouted, scrambling for anything to defend himself. His hand closed around a lamp, and he swung it hard, the base cracking against the man's shoulder. The attacker snarled but didn't falter, his fingers grazing Elias's arm before Cashin tackled him to the ground. The second intruder was already down, unconscious, blood pooling beneath him. "We need to go," Cashin said, his voice rough, blood streaking his face. He grabbed Elias's hand, pulling him toward the door. "Now." Elias didn't argue. They fled into the night, the Seattle rain masking their footsteps as they darted through alleys and side streets. Cashin's grip was firm, his eyes scanning every shadow. Elias's legs burned, his body protesting the strain, but fear in the life inside him kept him moving. They ended up in a rundown motel on the city's edge, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Cashin barricaded the door with a chair and checked the windows before turning to Elias, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentler now, though his hands trembled as he reached for Elias. "No," Elias admitted, sinking onto the bed. His shirt clung to his skin, damp with rain and sweat. "I'm scared, Cashin. I don't know what's happening, and I don't know if I can trust you." Cashin knelt before him, his green eyes searching Elias's face. "I know I left you. I thought I was protecting you. But I'm here now, and I swear, I'll tell you everything." Elias wanted to believe him, but the weight of the unknown pressed down on him. "Start talking," he said, his voice sharp. What are you? What's our baby? Cashin exhaled, sitting back on his heels. I'm a shifter, part wolf, part something older. My bloodline carries traces of an ancient lineage, one that's been hunted for centuries. Our child, they'll inherit that power. That's why they're after you. Who's they? Elias demanded, his hand instinctively resting on his stomach. A rival pack, Cashin said, his jaw tight. The Iron Claws. They believe hybrids like our child are abominations or weapons. They'll stop at nothing to either kill you or take the baby. Elias's blood ran cold. And you didn't think to tell me this before. I didn't know you were pregnant, Cashin said, his voice breaking. That night, I felt the bond, but I didn't realize how deep it went. When I found out they were tracking you, I came back. I couldn't stay away. The sincerity in his voice cracked something in Elias's chest. He wanted to hate Cashin for leaving, for dragging him into this nightmare. But the pull between them was undeniable. He reached out, his fingers brushing Cashin's cheek, and the alpha leaned into the touch, eyes closing briefly. We can't keep running, Elias said softly. I need to know you're in this with me for real. I am, Cashin vowed, his hand covering Elias's. I'll protect you both, no matter what. The moment was fragile, a flicker of hope in the chaos. But it didn't last. A low growl outside the motel room snapped Cashin to his feet, his body tensing. They found us, he whispered. Stay here. Before Elias could protest, Cashin slipped out into the rain, leaving him alone with his fear. Minutes stretched into eternity, the silence broken only by distant snarls and the thud of bodies. When Cashin returned, his shirt was torn, blood staining his hands, but he was alive. They're gone for now, he said, locking the door. But we need to move again. There's a safe house in the Cascades. We can hide there. Elias nodded, exhaustion weighing him down. As they packed what little they had, he caught Cashin watching him, a mix of guilt and longing in his eyes. What? Elias asked, his voice softer now. I don't deserve you, Cashin said quietly. But I'm going to fight for you. For both of you. Elias didn't respond, but as they slipped into the night, his hand found Cashin's, their fingers intertwining. It wasn't forgiveness not yet, but it was a start. The drive to the Cascades was long, the road winding through dark forests that felt alive with secrets. Elias dozed fitfully, waking to find Cashin's hand resting protectively on his knee. The safe house was a small cabin, hidden deep in the woods, its walls lined with wards that Cashin said would mask their scent. Inside, they finally had a moment to breathe. Elias sat by the fire, watching Cashin clean a cut on his arm. How did you end up like this? Elias asked. This life. These enemies. Cashin's eyes darkened. I was born into it. My family led our pack for generations. But the Iron Claws betrayed us. They killed my parents. My sister. I've been running ever since, trying to keep our bloodline alive. Elias's heart ached at the pain in his voice. And now I'm part of it, he said, more to himself than Cashin. You are, Cashin said, moving closer. But you're not just part of it. You're the best part of me. Their lips met, soft at first, then desperate, as if they could outrun the danger in each other's arms. For the first time since that night in Seattle, Elias felt safe not from the world, but from the fear that he was alone in it. But safety was an illusion. As they pulled apart, a howl echoed through the forest. Too close. Too hungry. Cashin's eyes flashed gold, his body tensing. They're coming, he said. And this time, they brought reinforcements. The howl lingered in the air, a chilling promise of violence. Elias's heart thudded as Cashin grabbed a duffel bag from under the cabin's floorboards, pulling out a crossbow and a handful of silver-tipped bolts. "Stay inside," he ordered, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "No matter what you hear, don't come out." "I'm not helpless," Elias snapped, his hand tightening on the chair's armrest. "This is my fight too." Cashin's eyes softened, but he shook his head. "You're carrying our child. That's your fight. Let me handle this." Before Elias could argue, Cashin slipped out the door, his silhouette blending into the dark. The cabin felt suffocating. The fires crackled too loud in the silence. Elias paced, his hand resting on his stomach, where a faint flutter reminded him of the life they were fighting for. He wasn't just an Omega anymore, was a father, and that gave him a strength he hadn't known he had. Minutes passed. Then a crash shook the cabin. Elias froze, his breath catching as snarls and shouts filled the night. He crept to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. Shadows moved in the trees, too many, too fast. Cashin was out there, outnumbered, fighting for their lives. A sharp pain shot through Elias's abdomen, and he gasped, clutching the windowsill. Not now, he thought, panic rising. The baby wasn't due for months, but the stress, the fear, it was taking its toll. He forced himself to breathe, to focus, but the pain came again, sharper this time. The door burst open, and Elias spun, expecting an attacker. It was Cashin, bloodied but standing, his eyes wild. "We need to go," he said, grabbing Elias's arm. "The wards are down. They're coming." Elias didn't ask questions. They fled into the forest, Cashin half carrying him as branches clawed at their clothes. The pain in Elias's abdomen eased, but his fear didn't. The howls were closer now, a chorus of predators closing in. Cashin led them to a hidden cave, its entrance masked by vines. Inside, the air was damp and cold, but it was shelter. "They'll find us," Elias whispered, his voice shaking. "Won't they?" "Not if I can help it," Cashin said, his jaw tight. He pulled Elias close, his warmth a stark contrast to the cave's chill. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this." "You didn't," Elias said, his voice firm despite the fear. "I chose you that night. I felt it to the bond. I'm not letting go of that, no matter what's out there." Cashin's eyes glistened, and he kissed Elias fiercely, as if pouring all his strength into that moment. "I love you," he whispered, the words raw and unguarded. "I didn't think I could, but I do." Elias's heart swelled, but there was no time for words. A shadow moved at the cave's entrance, and Cashin shoved Elias behind him, crossbow raised. The figure that stepped inside wasn't a wolf, it was a woman, her hair silver despite her young face, her eyes sharp and calculating. "Cashin Holt," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "You've been hard to track." "Celine," Cashin growled, his body tense. "What do you want?" "Your hybrid," she said, her gaze flicking to Elias. "The Iron Claws will pay a fortune for it. Hand him over, and you walk away." Elias's blood ran cold, but Cashin's laugh was bitter. "You think I'd sell my mate? My child?" Celine's smile was cruel. "You're outnumbered. Your pack is gone. You have nothing left but a losing fight." "Then I'll fight," Cashin said, his voice a low snarl. He fired the crossbow, the bolt grazing Celine's arm. She hissed, retreating into the dark, but her laughter echoed. "This isn't over," she called. Cashin turned to Elias, his face pale but determined. We can't stay here. There's a safe house deeper in the mountains. If we make it, we can regroup. Elias nodded, his hand finding Cashin's. They moved deeper into the cave, following a narrow tunnel Cashin seemed to know by heart. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, but Elias clung to the warmth of Cashin's hand, to the promise of a future they might still have. Hours later, they emerged into a clearing, the safe house a small cabin nestled against a cliff. Inside, it was stocked with supplies, food, weapons, medical kits. Cashin checked the perimeter while Elias sank onto a cot, exhaustion and pain warring in his body. The baby kicked, a reminder of what was at stake. We're safe for now, Cashin said, returning to Elias's side. But we need a plan. The Iron Claws won't stop. Then we don't stop either, Elias said, his voice steady despite the fear. We fight for our family. Together. Cashin's smile was small but real, and he pulled Elias into his arms. For a moment, the world was quiet, their bond a shield against the chaos. But the howls in the distance reminded them the fight was far from over. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. But Elias felt no peace. The safe house was a temporary refuge, and the howls from the night before still echoed in his mind. Cashin stood by the window, his silhouette tense, a man carrying the weight of a war he hadn't chosen. We can't keep running, Elias said, breaking the silence. He sat on the cot, one hand on his stomach, the other clutching a mug of tea. They'll find us again. Cashin turned, his green eyes heavy with guilt. I know. But I have an idea. There's someone who can help, a former pack member. A healer. She's in hiding. But if we can reach her, she might know how to protect the baby. Elias nodded, trusting Cashin despite the unknowns. They packed quickly, moving through the forest with practiced caution. The journey was grueling, Elias's body aching with every step, but Cashin's presence kept him grounded. By midday, they reached a secluded cabin, its roof covered in moss, blending into the trees. The healer, an older woman named Mara, welcomed them with wary eyes. Her hands were steady as she examined Elias, her touch gentle but probing. This child is powerful, she said, her voice low. The hybrid bloodline is rare, part wolf, part ancient spirit. It's why the Iron Claws want it. Can you help us? Elias asked, his voice trembling. Mara's gaze softened. I can mask the child's energy, make it harder for them to track you. But it's temporary. You need to end this. Cashin. Cashin's jaw tightened. I know. I'm going to challenge their alpha. It's the only way. Elias's heart stopped. A challenge? You mean a fight to the death? It's pack law, Cashin said, his voice steady but pained. If I win, they'll back off. If I lose, you won't, Elias said fiercely, grabbing his hand. You can't. I need you. We need you. Cashin's eyes glistened, and he pulled Elias into a fierce embrace. I'll come back to you. I promise. Mara worked quickly, chanting softly as she placed herbs and stones around Elias, her hands glowing faintly. The ritual dulled the strange pulses in Elias's body, giving him a fleeting sense of safety. But as Cashin prepared to leave, the weight of his absence loomed. I love you, Elias said, his voice breaking. Come back to me. Cashin kissed him, deep and desperate, then slipped into the forest. Elias watched him go, his heart a tangle of fear and hope. Mara stayed with him, her presence a quiet comfort as they waited. Hours later, a howl shattered the silence, long and triumphant. Elias's breath caught, his hands trembling as he clutched Mara's arm. "Is that?" "It's done," Mara said, her voice calm but heavy. "He won." Cashin returned at dusk, battered but alive, his eyes glowing with a mix of exhaustion and victory. Elias ran to him, tears streaming as they collided, their embrace a lifeline. "You're okay," Elias whispered, his voice choked. "I told you I'd come back," Cashin said, his smile weary but real. The Iron Claws were gone, their alpha defeated, their pack scattered. But the victory wasn't the end. Mara warned them that others might come, drawn by the hybrid's power. Elias and Cashin knew their fight wasn't over, but it was different now. They weren't just running, they were building something. Months later, in a quiet house on the outskirts of Seattle, Elias gave birth to their son, Luca. The baby's eyes, one green like Cashin's, one hazel like Elias's, held a spark of something ancient, something powerful. But to Elias, he was just their child, a miracle born of love and resilience. Cashin stood beside him, holding Luca with a gentleness that belied his strength. "We did this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You, me, him. We're a family." Elias leaned against him, exhaustion and joy mingling. The world outside still held danger's packs, secrets, shadows, but inside this moment, they were untouchable. Their love had survived the heat, the hunt, the war. It had forged something stronger than fear, something worth fighting for. As Luca's tiny hand curled around Elias's finger, he felt the truth settle in his bones. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The secrets, the dangers, the unknown, they were nothing compared to the bond they'd built. A love that burned brighter than any heat, fiercer than any wolf.